small town, tensions simmered between three groups: the farmers, the industrialists, and the environmentalists. Each side believed they were fighting for a noble cause. The farmers wanted to protect their land and way of life. The industrialists sought progress and profit, dreaming of factories that would bring jobs. Meanwhile, the environmentalists rallied to save the earth, fearing destruction of nature. One day, a devastating drought struck, pushing farmers to the brink. They needed water, but the industrialists were diverting rivers for their factories. In a shocking twist, the environmentalists discovered the industrialists were polluting the very water they claimed to need. The conflict erupted into protests, accusations, and even sabotage. As tensions escalated, a surprising alliance formed. Farmers and environmentalists joined forces, aiming to protect the land. They launched a campaign to raise awareness about sustainable practices. Meanwhile, the industrialists faced growing backlash. The town was divided, but hope flickered. Could these groups find common ground? The answer lay in their willingness to listen and adapt. The path to resolution was fraught with challenges, but unity could change everything.
In 2043, Mia, a fighter pilot, lost everything in the Great Divide. The Dominion's control over her country had shattered her world. But a memory remained, her grandmother's secret recipe for love. One day, Mia's squadron was ordered to strike the Dominion's last power plant. The skies were filled with enemy fighters, but Mia flew with fierce resolve. As missiles flew and jets exploded, Mia's mind returned to her grandmother's voice. "Make this when you need me, dear." When a massive bomber threatened the mission, Mia locked her target, guided by love and strength. With a single missile, the bomber fell, turning the tide. The enemy retreated, and Mia whispered, "You're never truly gone, Grandma." In the chaos of war, love still guided her. In 2043, Mia, a fighter pilot, lost everything in the Great Divide. The Dominion's control over her country had shattered her world. But a memory remained, her grandmother's secret recipe for love. One day, Mia's squadron was ordered to strike the Dominion's last power plant. The skies were filled with enemy fighters, but Mia flew with fierce resolve. As missiles flew and jets exploded, Mia's mind returned to her grandmother's voice. "Make this when you need me, dear." When a massive bomber threatened the mission, Mia locked her target, guided by love and strength. With a single missile, the bomber fell, turning the tide. The enemy retreated, and Mia whispered, "You're never truly gone, Grandma." In the chaos of war, love still guided her. Title: Wings of War. In 2043, Mia, a fighter pilot, lost everything in the Great Divide. The Dominion's control over her country had shattered her world, but a memory remained, her grandmother's secret recipe for love. One day, Mia's squadron was ordered to strike the Dominion's last power plant. The skies were filled with enemy fighters, but Mia flew with fierce resolve. As missiles flew and jets exploded, Mia's mind returned to her grandmother's voice. "Make this when you need me, dear." When a massive bomber threatened the mission, Mia locked her target, guided by love and strength. With a single missile, the bomber fell, turning the tide. The enemy retreated, and Mia whispered, "You're never truly gone, Grandma." In the chaos of war, love still guided her. The sky was quiet as Captain Ali soared toward his mission: destroy the enemy radar station and return safely. His radar suddenly beeped. 2 enemy jets were closing in fast. Ali pulled his jet into a steep climb, forcing the enemy to follow. At the peak, he veered sharply left and slowed down. One plane lost track, but the other stayed on his tail. Ali dove, gained speed, and executed a wide loop to get behind his pursuer. With precision, he locked on and fired. The enemy jet exploded into flames. Low on fuel, Ali reached the radar station. Anti-aircraft fire erupted around him, but he dodged skillfully, locked onto the target, and dropped his bombs. A massive explosion lit the sky. Mission accomplished. Returning to base with his damaged jet, Ali made a shaky landing. His commander met him with a proud smile. "You did it, Captain. All on your own." In just minutes, Ali had changed the course of the battle, a lone warrior in the sky. The skies were dark, painted with thick storm clouds, as Lieutenant Aras flew his stealth fighter deep into enemy territory. His mission: neutralize the enemy's aerial command unit before their fleet could strike. Aras's radar pinged. 3 enemy jets were closing in. He silenced his comms and adjusted his stealth mode. Moving like a shadow, he flanked the lead fighter. With precision, he fired a missile, taking it down before the others noticed. The remaining jets spotted him and fired. Aras rolled his jet, narrowly escaping the missiles. With a sharp climb, he turned the tables, diving behind one of his pursuers. His cannons roared, and another jet spiraled into the abyss. The final jet pressed hard, attempting to outmaneuver him. Aras baited it into the storm clouds, where visibility was nil. Using his instincts, he broke through the turbulence, looped behind his foe, and fired the decisive shot. As the enemy command unit loomed ahead, Aras unleashed his payload, watching the explosion light up the stormy skies. Mission accomplished. He turned homeward, a silent hunter in the chaos. Captain Layla soared above a scarlet-drenched horizon, leading her squadron toward an enemy fleet advancing on their coastal stronghold. The air crackled with tension as radar signals flared. Hostile fighters were closing in. "Stay in formation," Layla ordered, her voice calm yet firm. As the first enemy jets engaged, the sky erupted in a chaotic symphony of missiles and gunfire. Layla banked sharply, evading a heat seeker, and retaliated with pinpoint accuracy, downing her attacker. "Bandit on your six, Captain!" a wingman shouted. Layla rolled her jet, using the sun's glare to disappear momentarily before cutting through with a reverse loop. The enemy overshot, and her cannons tore through its fuselage. With her squadron pushing forward, Layla targeted the lead bomber, threatening their defenses. Dodging flak, she unleashed her missiles. A fiery explosion engulfed the bomber, scattering its escorts. As silence fell, her squadron regrouped. The fleet was neutralized, the stronghold secured. Over the radio, a voice crackled. "We couldn't have done it without you, Captain." Layla smiled, gazing at the now peaceful crimson horizon. Phantom strike. The moonlit sky was deceptively calm as Commander Kamal led his strike team toward an enemy airfield buried deep in the mountains. Their jets moved silently, radar signatures suppressed as they neared the target. "Engage on my mark," Kamal ordered, his eyes locked on the glowing base below. But just as they began their descent, alarms blared. Enemy interceptors were scrambling. A dogfight erupted. Kamal broke formation, luring two enemy fighters away from his team. He twisted through the narrow canyon, dodging missiles that exploded dangerously close. Spotting a gap, he pulled an impossible climb, looping above his pursuers. His guns roared, and one enemy jet disintegrated midair. The second fighter stayed on him, relentless. Kamal slowed suddenly, forcing the jet to overshoot. With a precise lock-on, his missile struck true. "Base defenses neutralized," his wingman reported. Kamal refocused, diving low and releasing his payload. The airfield erupted in flames, disabling the enemy's operations. As they regrouped, Kamal's team cheered. Another victory in the books. But Kamal's gaze remained on the horizon, knowing the war was far from over. Steel wings. Above the icy tundra, Lieutenant Asya gripped her fighter's controls, leading her squadron against an incoming fleet of enemy bombers. The mission was clear: stop the bombers before they reached the Allied base. "Enemy fighters at 2 o'clock, crackled the radio. Asya banked hard, spotting the glint of approaching jets. She fired her afterburners and dove into the fray, her missiles locking onto the lead bomber. One hit, and it burst into flames, plummeting to the frozen ground. An enemy jet closed in behind her, cannons blazing. She twisted sharply, narrowly avoiding the barrage. Using a spiral dive, she looped behind the attacker and unleashed her guns. The jet erupted in a fiery explosion. Her squadron fought valiantly, downing bomber after bomber, but one broke through. Asya surged forward, her heart pounding. "Not today," she whispered, firing her last missile. It struck true, tearing the final bomber apart just miles from the base. Returning to the base, her comrades cheered, but Asya knew the true victory lay in their unity, a force stronger than steel wings. Eagle's last stand. Captain Murat's fighter roared above the desert as a massive enemy fleet approached their front lines. Outnumbered and low on reinforcements, Murat and his wingman had no choice but to hold them off. "Stay sharp, Ali," Murat said over the radio as the first wave of enemy jets closed in. Missiles streaked through the sky, exploding like fireworks. Murat rolled left, dodging a heat seeker, and fired back, downing the closest fighter. Ali's voice crackled. "Two on my tail." Murat spotted him spiraling away, pursued by enemy jets. Diving into the chaos, he locked onto one and unleashed his guns. Flames erupted as the jet spiraled down. "Got your back," Murat said, pulling Ali out of danger. But the bombers were closing fast. Murat climbed high, targeting the lead aircraft. He fired his missiles, watching the giant bomber erupt in flames. The remaining bombers scattered, forced to retreat. As the battlefield fell silent, Ali spoke softly. "You saved us all." Murat exhaled, scanning the empty skies. We live to fight another day. Blaze in the sky. The sun was setting as Lieutenant Deniz's squadron raced to intercept a fleet of enemy drones heading for a key supply route. Unlike traditional jets, these drones were faster, smarter, and deadly in numbers. Spread out and engage, Deniz commanded. The first wave of drones swarmed in, launching precise missile strikes. Deniz rolled sharply, evading a barrage, and fired back, obliterating 2 drones in one swift pass. "Watch your 6," a wingman yelled. Deniz twisted into a barrel roll, narrowly dodging a drone locking onto her. With a sharp dive and quick aim, her cannons shredded it into debris. The enemy's lead drone, twice the size of the others, emerged, flanked by escorts. Deniz knew taking it down was the only way to stop the assault. She climbed high, then nosedived at full throttle, weaving through fire. "Locked on," she muttered, releasing her missiles. The lead drone exploded, its fragments scattering the smaller ones. The swarm disbanded. As her squadron regrouped, Deniz gazed at the horizon. The battle was won, but the war raged on, painting the sky in hues of fire and determination. Sky Inferno. Over the vast ocean, Captain Selim led his squadron against an enemy carrier fleet launching waves of fighter jets. The air crackled with radio chatter as hostile jets swarmed toward them like a black storm. "Hold the line!" Selim barked as he dived into the fray. His missiles streaked toward 2 incoming jets, tearing them apart in fiery explosions. Banking hard, he avoided a counterstrike, the shockwave rattling his cockpit. Suddenly, a wingman cried out, "I'm hit!" Selim spotted his ally spiraling down, smoke trailing. He shot through enemy fire to cover him, downing another jet in his path. "Eject, now!" Selim ordered, watching his comrade parachute safely into the waves. The enemy flagship loomed ahead, flanked by a deadly escort. Selim climbed high, releasing flares to mislead heat-seekers. "All units, focus on the carrier," he commanded. With precision, he launched his final missile. It struck the carrier's deck, igniting a massive chain of explosions. As flames consumed the enemy fleet, Selim exhaled. Another victory, but the cost of each battle weighed heavier with every... The clouds rumbled as Captain Ayla's squadron approached an enemy airbase hidden deep within the mountains. Rain lashed against their cockpits, and lightning illuminated the silhouettes of enemy fighters scrambling to intercept them. "They're on us!" Ayla called out, her radar lighting up with hostile signals. She pulled into a sharp climb, evading a missile by inches. Pivoting midair, she unleashed a barrage of cannon fire, shredding an enemy jet. Her wingman shouted, "2 more coming from above!" Ayla rolled left, diving into the storm clouds to mask her position. Emerging behind the attackers, she locked on and fired, watching their jets erupt in flames. With the skies clear for a moment, Ayla focused on the target below. Anti-aircraft fire erupted, tracing fiery arcs toward her squadron. "Cover me!" she yelled, diving toward the base. She released her payload, and the ground shook as explosions tore through the facility. Pulling up just in time, Ayla's squad regrouped. The mission was a success, the enemy base destroyed. Through the rain, Ayla gazed at the stormy horizon, knowing the battle was flames over the valley. Captain Erdem's squadron soared through the misty valley at dawn, their mission clear: halt the enemy convoy guarded by a fleet of fighters. The rising sun cast long shadows, perfect for a surprise attack. "Steady, team. We strike hard and fast," Erdem said, gripping the controls. As they neared the target, enemy jets appeared, weaving through the cliffs. Erdem accelerated, locking onto the lead fighter. His missile streaked forward, hitting its mark. The enemy scattered, but one fighter latched onto his tail. Dodging fire, Erdem veered sharply, baiting the attacker into a canyon. With a swift roll, he looped around and his cannons roared. The jet exploded in a fiery blaze. Meanwhile, the convoy's anti-aircraft guns lit up the valley. "Engage the convoy," Erdem ordered. His squadron rained missiles onto the vehicles below, leaving a trail of destruction. With the convoy neutralized, Erdem rallied his team. "We did it," his wingman said, but Erdem's focus remained on the horizon. Each victory was a step closer to ending the war, yet the cost weighed heavy in the silent
Tash twilight ambush. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Commander Riza's squadron flew low over the desert, their jets blending into the shadows. Their mission: intercept an enemy bomber fleet heading toward the capital. "Contacts incoming," the radar operator reported. Riza's eyes narrowed. "Climb and engage," he ordered. His jet roared upward, meeting a formation of enemy fighters. The first missile streaked past his wing. Riza rolled sharply, dodging the attack, and returned fire, downing the lead jet. The sky erupted with explosions as his squadron clashed with the enemy. Spotting the bombers in the distance, Riza broke away, accelerating toward them. Enemy escorts pursued, their cannons blazing. He dove into the chaos, juking left and right until he locked onto a bomber and launched a missile. The massive aircraft exploded, scattering the formation. "Take out the rest," Riza shouted. His team finished the job, ensuring no bomber reached its target. As they regrouped under the twilight sky, Riza breathed deeply. Another battle won, but the war raged on, painted in streaks of fire and determination. Nightfall offensive. The darkened skies stretched endlessly as Lieutenant Seelan's squadron soared through the night, their radar locked on an enemy strike force heading toward a vital military base. The mission was simple: destroy the enemy before they could launch their assault. "Stay tight, everyone. We hit them fast and hard," Seelan commanded. The team dipped below the clouds, engines roaring as they approached the target. Suddenly, enemy fighters appeared from the darkness, their lights blinking like distant stars. Seelan fired first, a missile cutting through the night and striking one of the attackers. Explosions lit up the sky as her squadron engaged the enemy. Her wingman was hit, but Seelan expertly took down 2 more fighters, covering him as he fell back. "Keep pushing. We can't let them reach the base," Seelan shouted. With pinpoint accuracy, she locked onto the lead bomber, diving beneath it and releasing a missile. The bomber erupted in flames, its destruction sending a shockwave through the air. The remaining fighters scattered. As the last of the enemy jets fell from the sky, Seelan's squadron regrouped. The night was still, the base safe, at least for now. The battle was over, but the war was far from won.
The early morning sky was filled with a cold, metallic stillness as Major Elif led her squadron toward a heavily guarded enemy stronghold. Their target, a command center buried deep in the mountains, vital to the enemy's operations. The air was tense as they approached. "Stay in formation, everyone," Elif ordered, her voice steady. The radar lit up, hostile jets closing in from all directions. "Break left," the first volley of missiles shot toward them. Elif pulled sharply to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. Her squadron followed, weaving through a web of enemy fire. She locked onto the closest fighter, fired a missile, and watched it disintegrate into the clouds. "Cover me while I take out the base," Elif shouted, accelerating toward the command center. Enemy jets chased her, but she expertly dodged their fire, taking them out one by one. With the command center in sight, Elif launched her bombs, sending the base up in flames. As the last of the enemy fighters retreated, Elif's squadron regrouped. They had won the day, but the war was far from over.
The sun was barely a sliver on the horizon as Captain Demir's squadron flew low over the jungle, their jets cutting through the humid air. Their mission: eliminate an enemy convoy transporting experimental weapons to the front lines. "Stay low and fast," Demir ordered, his eyes scanning the radar. The convoy was heavily guarded by fighter escorts patrolling above. As they approached, the radar flared. Enemy jets were closing in. "Engage," Demir shouted, pulling his fighter into a steep climb. Missiles streaked past him as he looped around, locking onto an enemy jet. His missile hit its target, the explosion lighting up the dawn sky. His wingman, Ayla, called out, "I've got 2 on my tail." Demir dove in, his cannons blazing, tearing through one enemy. The other broke off, giving Ayla the chance to regroup. The convoy came into view, its armored trucks snaking through the jungle. Anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky. Demir led the charge, evading the flak and dropping his payload. A series of explosions ripped through the convoy, halting its advance. As they returned to base, the jungle below smoldering, Demir knew they had delayed the enemy's plans. But the fight was far. The sun was setting behind the mountain range as Lieutenant Khan led his squadron into hostile airspace, their mission critical: destroy an enemy weapons depot hidden in the highlands before it could be used against their forces. "Stay tight, everyone. We'll hit hard and fast," Khan said, scanning the radar for threats. The moment they crossed into enemy territory, the radar beeped. Enemy jets closing in from the north. "Prepare for engagement," Khan ordered, pulling sharply to avoid the first volley of missiles. The sky erupted in gunfire and explosions. Khan locked onto an enemy fighter, firing his missiles, and watched as it disintegrated in a fiery blast. His wingman, Khan, called out, "I'm surrounded!" Ken dove to the rescue, taking down one fighter, then another, while Khan regrouped. The depot came into view, heavily guarded by enemy bombers and anti-aircraft guns. "Cover me!" Ken shouted as he made a high-speed dive, dodging incoming flak. With a final, precise strike, he launched his bombs, reducing the depot to rubble. As the squadron regrouped, Ken surveyed the sky. The mission was a success, but the war was Steel Storm. The night sky was shrouded in darkness as Major Yusuf's squadron flew toward the heart of enemy territory. Their mission, to cripple a strategic radar station hidden within a network of mountains. "Stay sharp, we're flying blind until we're close," Yusuf said, eyes glued to the instruments. Suddenly, the radar lit up. Enemy fighters appeared from behind the clouds. "Engage," Yusuf ordered. His jet swerved to avoid the first missile, firing back with a devastating shot that downed one enemy fighter. The rest of the squadron scattered to engage their targets, and chaos filled the sky. A missile warning blared in Yusuf's cockpit. "Break left," he shouted, narrowly avoiding another strike. He rolled sharply and fired his cannons, taking out the pursuer. The radar station was in sight, surrounded by heavy anti-air defenses. "We've got one shot at this," Yusuf said, diving toward the target. Explosions erupted as his bombs hit the station, sending a fiery plume into the night. With the mission complete, the squadron pulled away from the wreckage. As the horizon began to lighten, Yusuf knew their victory was small, but necessary for the larger